today I'm talking about the first 3 films in the Once Upon a Time in China series. First up is Once Upon a Time in China, Part 1. This stars Jet Li. It is a 1991 film, and I went into it thinking it's gonna be kind of like Hero, where it's gonna be like a cool kung fu action drama that's probably a bit of propaganda, but overall it would be an enjoyable experience. Instead, what I got was a comedy that's about a really sad subject, and then occasionally there's some kung fu fun. But it's mostly a comedy, and that really threw me. I also didn't really find a lot of the humor funny. It's very like slapsticky stuff. Not all of the movies are like that though. I mean, there is definitely comedy throughout all 3 of these, but this one without a doubt has it the most. The main plot is that China's being colonized. There's Brits and other countries are just like, they're not capital I invading, they're just, you know, like very subtly invading, and locals aren't happy about it. And it's alright. It was really not what I was expecting it to be. I had the very wrong mindset for this movie. It was fine. I still watched it all. I would say I definitely liked it. It's middle of the road for sure. Would I recommend it? If you want a Hong Kong comedy, then yes, go for it. I liked the other 2 more than this one, and honestly, I think you could go into either of the other 2 without having seen the first one. So like, yeah, no, you don't have to watch this movie if you want to enjoy the better ones, but yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely an experience for sure. So yeah, I don't know. Next up is Once Upon a Time in China, Part 2. This came out in 1992, and this one's actually more of what I thought it would be. There still is comedy mixed in, but they spent much more time focusing on kung fu fun stuff and less time on the comedy. And there's just kind of a lot going on that makes it more of an interesting experience. Because in this one, it starts off really epic, where there's this group of people who have this really neat opening ceremony thing, and it's really fun, and you're just like, you're into it, and it's an enjoyable experience. And then we finally get near the end, and then suddenly they're like, death to all foreigners, and you're like, oh, this is this type of people, all right. And like, they're extreme. Like, they literally just want to go around killing all foreigners because they believe that'll save China. But like, there's also more going on. Like, there's several different factions of people that are all fighting, or like maybe secretly in alignment with each other. Maybe we're trying to like assassinate a president of some country, or a diplomat perhaps. Who knows? And yeah, no, I enjoyed this one a good solid amount. If you're gonna watch just one, this is the one that I would recommend, just because the action is probably the best in this one. It does get pretty impressive in the third one, but this is definitely like a good solid step up all around from the first one. The story is much more interesting, the action's better, it just looks better, it's got more going on, it's so much more interesting than the first one. And I definitely like the end a lot. Really, all 3 movies shined in the third act when just action set pieces took over. I would say that's most true for the third one, but it's definitely true for this one as well. So yeah, if you're gonna watch just one, I would definitely say just go with this one. It's interesting, it's fun, it's still got some weird tonal things, but like, it works, it's good, it's a good time. And again, you don't have to watch the first one or the third one to enjoy this one. You can just let it stand alone, it's fine. And lastly is Once Upon a Time in China, Part 3. This one, I think technically the government is the bad guy, and they literally have a conversation where they talk about like, how are we gonna distract the masses so that they're fighting each other rather than us? And they're like, oh, we're gonna have this lion competition to see who can be the Lion King. These things. So this movie's just about like a bunch of gangs that do these lion dances. One gang in particular is trying to like blackmail other gangs into not participating in the competition, and then eventually we do see the competition as well. So it's gang stuff, but it's all centered on these. So it feels silly, but also not, because it is like gang violence, but they're also wearing elaborate costumes at the same time. My emotions on this are complicated. Like I said, the third act of this is where this movie shines. It's a very elaborate end with a lot of moving parts. There's a lot less humor in this one. I feel like the only like full-on comedy bit they did was near the beginning, where it was like train humor of like, how do we eat food on a train? And it's like, Why? Move on. Really though, this didn't quite hit the same heights for me as the second one, but I do think if you are going through this trilogy, or if you did watch the second one and you're like, oh, that wasn't too bad, I would say you could keep watching. You could do like just the second one, or you could do the second one and the third one. Doing one of those combinations is a valid option. So yeah, it was decent and I would recommend it. Not as a standalone, but in conjunction with at least the second one. So yeah, it's decent. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, I got Once Upon a Time in China Part 1, sitting at number 109 in the liked section. And then in chronological order, we got Once Upon a Time in China Part 2, sitting at 89 in the quite like section. And then lastly is Once Upon a Time in China Part 3, sitting at number 95 in the liked section. And this is out of a total of 144 old movies so far this year.